Okay, so we're live on Facebook. Okay, we got it. Now,
You got it.
it's time for us to start officially. So, greetings, brothers, sisters, friends, comrades. Uh, this is another one of those Freedom Friday forums. We're here on November 25th, 2022, and we're here to discuss a very important situation West Papua and the freedom struggles of the people of West Papua. And we have a guest speaker, presenter, Brother Raki. And Brother Raki is no stranger to us. He's been with us a couple of times before. And, you know, what he has shared with us is one of the reasons why we can continue the dialogue on what is going on in West Papua, because every time he does, it's an education, and the information is always, what we need for the time. So let me go to what is important to us in the UNIA whenever we start our presentations, and that is, our ritual, because as you know, a whole lot of people don't know what it's all about, what the UNIA is all about, and where Division 330 is. We're in Washington, D.C., but with this presentation, we're covering the territory of it's global. So this Freedom Friday Forum comes out of a forum we normally had in Washington, D.C., at least once a month at the is it Uhuru House? No, Umoja House in Washington, D.C. And the pandemic has forced us to go in a different direction. And had it not been for the pandemic, we would not have thought that we can go global. But we are so now, and I don't want to give thanks to the pandemic, but I want to say, of course, it has been a shifter of things, a new paradigm, so to speak, in the way we communicate. All right, so to start, let me recite the official pledge to the red, black, and green, which is the flag of the UNIA and the flag of African people throughout the world. It's representative of African people. And red being for blood, black being for the people, green being for the land. So I commit my body, mind, and spirit to the protection, defense, and security of the red, black, and green. I dedicate my life to the redemption of Mother Africa and the liberation of her scattered Black children. I accept for myself and my descendants the teachings of universal African nationalism, and I promise that our children will be instilled with the purpose and knowledge of themselves as African people, in order that the cause of our struggle will neither falter nor fail, until all Black people are free and united through one God, one aim, one destiny. And I think that alone might be enough for some people. But we also, the UNIA-ACL has a constitution, and that constitution is what directs the way we operate. It was promulgated in 1920, and our forefathers were looking towards changes in the world. It was a directive so that we can learn to govern ourselves. It's about self-reliance. African people throughout the world relying on themselves to govern themselves, like what we want for the people of West Papua. Self-determination. It's important that people are allowed to determine what their future should be and how they should govern themselves. So let me give you the preamble of the Constitution of the UNIA-ACL. The Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League is a social, friendly, humanitarian, charitable, educational, institutional, constructive, and expansive society, and is founded by persons desiring to the utmost to work for the general uplift of the Negro peoples of the world. And the members pledge themselves to do all in their power to conserve the rights of their noble race and to respect the rights of all mankind, believing always in the brotherhood of man and the fatherhood of God. The motto of the organization is one God, one aim, one destiny. Therefore, let justice be done to all mankind, realizing that if the strong oppresses the weak, confusion and discontent will ever mark the path of man. But with love, faith, and charity towards all, the reign of peace and plenty will be heralded into the world, and the generations of men shall be called blessed. And it's from that, brothers and sisters, folks out there in the audience, that we work our way towards the redemption of the African people. It's a struggle. It's an ongoing struggle. And we must be faithful. We must have faith in self that we can do it. As Marcus Garvey said, you know, if all the other people in the world can do it, we can do it. And as we see, it's absolutely necessary for us to unify in order to get it done, because it is what is happening. Of course, you know, let's set aside Europe and what's going on there. You know, that's about resources. And you know, what continent in the world has the resources that everybody is fighting over? So if we don't pay close attention, you know, we'll have nothing left for ourselves. So this is about redemption, African redemption. All right, I must go again to say, you know, Brother Raki, welcome. Brother Raki is from the Free West Papua campaign. He's based in the Netherlands, but he, of course, is a spokesperson for the West Papua people everywhere, in West Papua itself, and for the governing body of the United West Papuan people. I think it's the United Movement, United ULMWP, right? United Liberation Movement of People of West Papua. And he's the spokesperson. And good one at that, he does a good job. He's been at this for quite some time. And his role as a leader in this struggle is one that we, of course, you know, we welcome, and we are proud to have him with us. So now, Brother Raki, you know the drill with us, as usual. this, you know, there will be people here who will have no idea what West Papua and the issues that we have there is all about. So we always have to give a little background about West Papua and the struggles with Indonesia, and no, who else but you will give us that rendition of what it's all about. So I turn this over to you, and welcome again.
Thank you so much, Baba Mosi, for the kind introduction and for hosting this on behalf of the UNIA. The family, I appreciate the time and the opportunity our family gives to highlight the urgent situation of your family in West Papua. And for this time, to make sure that the family who are watching online have a clear image about the story, I will share my screen because I've prepared the presentation with just 15 slides. But just to make sure, I think you can see it now.
Yes.
On the screen, let me see, F5, does that work? There you go. So for those who doesn't know where West Papua is on a world map, just for the orientation, it's the big island right above Australia. The entire island is called New Guinea, and on this island, black Melanesian people lived there for thousands of years. And decent African descent, it's clear, and you will see that our ethnicity and culture is not different than many other tribes and nations on our mother continent, Africa. So a little bit about my background. Before I became the international spokesperson for the Free West Papua campaign, and indeed part as an executive within the United Liberation Movement for West Papua, which is an umbrella organization for the three biggest independence movements in West Papua, representing more than 1.8 million indigenous West Papuans, which is almost 70% of the current population. So as an honor and also responsibility, because of the enormous tasks that we carry, the bones of our ancestors as well, the voiceless and those who are still suffering today. So understanding what happened on this island, let me see, before we came into this situation, is to understand that West Papua nowadays belongs to Indonesia. But before that, we were a colony of course, a European country, in this case, the Netherlands, who colonized former Dutch East Indies, the Indonesia we know today. There was a war between Indonesia and the Netherlands after Indonesian independence. The Netherlands gave West Papua a different status, namely the Netherlands New Guinea. But under huge pressure, and especially from the United States, during the Cold War period, West Papua was handed over, although the sovereignty was handed over to Indonesia without any consultation of the indigenous West Papuans. So our future was basically sold without us having any involvement in the process. So since that moment, August 15, 1962, in the headquarters of the United Nations in New York, the Netherlands and Indonesia signed an agreement where the sovereignty was handed over, and in that agreement, the West Papuans should have a referendum being held in a free way, which didn't happen 7 years later, 1969, where just about 1,000 men were handpicked, intimidated on gunpoint, that if they didn't vote for integration into Indonesia, they and their family members would be killed. So from that moment, West Papua was officially handed over, acknowledged by the international community, supported by the US and the United Nations. It became part of the Indonesia we know today. And since that moment, the violation started. The press was immediately banned from entering to West Papua from 1963 up to today. Press is still not allowed to report them. It's a forbidden area. NGOs are banned to report over there. And because Indonesia wanted to keep this colony a secret for the world, and they almost succeed until our campaign was formed for about 20 years ago by our independence leader, is Honorable Benny Wenda. So with the vision that the right of self-determination must be put back on the world agenda, on the former colonizer in the Netherlands where I'm based, and in every other country, to know how the independence was hijacked by the Indonesian and the Netherlands state, and also facilitated by the United Nations. So all these violations could go on. One of them was also my father, who was assassinated by the Indonesian military 4 months before I was born. And as you can see, slavery kind of situation, lynching happening in modern days, West Papua, because the world ignored what is happening there, because Indonesia could block media from coming there, NGOs from reporting over there, and this is the result. and the reports aren't lying. This is just an old one from Amnesty International from 2018, and the title says everything, don't bother, just let him die, killing with impunity in West Papua. So we are looking, if you look at the numbers, it's very clear, 500,000 killings in the last 60 years in a population of less than 2 million. This is a genocide going on in this modern days society. And of course, as Brother Baba Moshev mentioned, what could be one of the reasons, of course, natural resources. The world's biggest gold mine is located in the heart of West Papua. It is also the second largest copper mine, and just this single mine is the largest taxpayer to the Indonesian government, and that has been owned by a US and Australian mining corporation, Freeport-McMoRan. And besides that, of course, the British came there as well with one of its largest LNG gas projects in West Papua, paying Indonesian military a lot of money to secure the area for the extraction of these resources, killing indigenous West Papuans to use their land for money. And the recent years, other companies such as palm oil companies, changing the entire landscape for, once again, their products. And this is the daily reality of indigenous West Papuans. It's one of the most militarized zones in the world if you compare citizens versus military personnel. And as you see how the mainstream media and politicians are responding to a conflict like Ukraine, 24/7 news coverage, but a genocide in a black nation for almost 60 years, no reports and nobody know about it, even not in white Australia, which is very close to the door. So this shows the double standard and of course this racist attitude against black people, which is not new, but as we can see what is happening in West Papua. So therefore our campaign exists to educate the world about this genocide against black people in the Pacific region and the ongoing colonization. So these are some important articles underlining this enormous richest island, flora, where it is biodiversity, culture, more than 1,000 tribes just in Papua New Guinea, and in West Papua more than 250 different tribes with their own languages and cultures, and enormous rich on cultural diversity. But unfortunately, these numbers are not in the interest of the world, the mainstream media, the US government, Australian government, European governments, how we are heading towards the extinction of our race and at the expense of the resources that this country is enormous rich of. So these are some slides to clarify the urgent situation which is going on for almost 60 years in a deadly silence around the world. But we are optimistic because we have seen that without the help of any big power, how much support we have created the last, 3 to 5 years. Our liberation movement have become a observer member within the Melanesian Spearhead Group, which is like a sub-regional organization, exists of Papua New Guinea, Fiji, Vanuatu, New Caledonia, so the island states are in the area, who've welcomed the West Papuan Liberation Movement, and we are hoping that the observer member will be a full membership next year. So the momentum, at least in the region, will be increasing, and we have some a space that we can equally negotiate with independent countries. But unfortunately, we haven't seen big support from the African Union the last 4 to 5 decades. So this is something that our liberation movement is now focusing on, to make sure that our African family, and especially the governments there, raise their voices, use their power to highlight this ongoing colonization, the killing of Black people in West Papua. So this is a constant process, and the lack of resources is always a challenge, because traveling the world to meet with leaders, to campaign, costs money, and we know we are very rich, but we are not controlling it. That's exactly the problem. So therefore, we count on friends in the countries they live. So to be a voice, to be an ally, and the only thing you have to do is to tell the story in the respective city or country you live in, to lobby with the governments or prepare meetings for our campaign, our movement. So the awareness will increase globally, and that's basically the formula of our campaign, and it is already paying off. And the last 2 years, we have the UN kind of reactivated, because of the Pacific Island Forum leaders have called for a United Nations human rights fact-finding mission to West Papua, which Indonesia is, of course, blocking for almost 2 years. And in the first place, they used the COVID pandemic as excuse to not allow them, but we know they can't hold it. So we build up the pressure. And the last 2 weeks at Geneva, the Human Rights Forum, 8 countries, including the US, Australia, and New Zealand, and the Netherlands, have highlighted the importance of this UN mission to visit West Papua, and that the Indonesian government should do a full investigation of these judicial killings, which happened several weeks ago. These are good steps. Of course, it's not good enough if you compare it to the attention that Ukrainians get from the West, whether it is military, economically, political statement, and so on, blah, blah, blah. Their lives are probably much more worth as our lives. So, but because we have no choice, we have not so much friends, we need every opportunity of, politicians or countries highlighting the urgent situation in West Papua. And I want to leave it there, give it back to Baba Moshe, and if there are questions, please feel free to share it with us or with me.
Thank you, my brother, for giving us that briefing. You've said quite a few things that we of course understand, and we can relate to, because we suffer that on a daily basis. Even outside of West Papua, you were there in the Netherlands, you're in Europe. I mean, this is in London. I mean, we're seeing all kinds of stuff. But yes, we are not in wonderment, because we know this has been going on for hundreds of years. So it's up to us,
yes,
to bring that pressure, or keep that pressure on.
absolutely,
so that people will know that we are not you're laying down and rolling over and playing dead or anything like that. We're in a struggle.
yes,
So we want you to know that we're in solidarity with the people of West Papua, and we will do all we can to help what within our resources, to help you and your people to gain what is rightfully theirs, and that is their independence. Now I'm saying I'm saying the United Nations, the West. I mean, this is 60 plus years, right? Isn't it? That
yes, it is.
they have ignored what's been going on in West Papua. And I know you're in certain circles, and I don't want to say anything that would make it more difficult for you to communicate within those circles. But how do you feel? I mean, you said that it's not enough what they're doing, but is there any indication that they want to go further or even try harder, or are they pressuring the Indonesians in any sense? What are the indications that they may be pushing hard on the Indonesians to do something different?
Thank you, Baba Mos. Yeah, that's a good question. The indications are not there. The only indication which is clear is that the office of the High Commissioner for UN High Commissioner for Human Rights is willing to visit West Papua, and that there are concerns about the gross human rights violations, and we welcome that because that's the case, right? But we are hoping that the UN and the global community take a stronger stand, because they have shown that they can do that. If you look at the attention in Ukraine, at the support the West is giving to Ukraine, right? So what is happening in West Papua with respect to the people in Ukraine is much worse. In Ukraine, there are about an estimation of 5,000 victims. That's 5,000 too much. Well, what about the 500,000 indigenous West Papuans in the indigenous peoples in West Papua? So this is a clear double standard, and that's where our task lies, to educate our family in African family in the diaspora around the world, to make sure that we will not accept it. Because if we allow this, as family, they can say, if their own family don't care, why should we care? So that is a constant process that I encourage us to educate each other, to stand in solidarity against the system of injustice created and mastered by the white people. That's they were in power 500 years ago, and they're still in power. So I have no illusion that they will change the attitude, because this is a clear example. So the task is to empower ourselves to understand what is happening, and what didn't finish. The power structures of the people who created the UN, it's the reason why we don't got the same attention as Ukraine. And therefore we need to, put pressure on the African leaders to speak out about this injustice, and not just to collaborate with the West to exploit the enormous resources our mother African continent has. It has to be beneficial for the people in Africa, but also to decolonize Black nations such as West Papua. This is the spirit that they are afraid of. And as long as the leaders of Africa be silent, this will continue. And so it's an enormous task, but I know that we will win this, because that's the only way that we will survive as Black nation, because they don't want us to exist. They know the power we have and the resources we have. We don't need them, they need us. This is something we must understand, because we are rich in resources, in culture, in nature, and that's what they what they want. They don't want us to benefit from it. They want them to benefit from it, and that's why they keep us, the position we are. Whether you look in West Papua, or you look in every other African country on the continent of Africa, or the diaspora globally, they will keep us low. So they will control us, and they will control our resources, and so they can live as they've done for more than 500 years. Yeah, I leave it there.
Okay, my brother. Before I go on to anything else, I think there's a question in the live chat. Brother Haru, is there a question from Facebook live chat? Can you see that?
I have to do a quick check. Hold on.
Okay. Meanwhile, if anybody else has a question, you're open to ask.
I'd like to ask, how would we identify an indigenous export product?
Say that again. I didn't get it.
How would we identify an indigenous export product?
Okay.
How do we identify an indigenous export product?
Yes. Given that the minerals and the resources belong to the people, but the power struggle is about the economics of export products, in the sense that they're willing to support Ukraine because Ukraine supports the agriculture of Europe and Africa.
Yes.
And that's why they trade balance with Ukraine.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
So
they don't care either.
Hmm.
Exactly. That's so. So the difference is that we haven't been allowed to even start our economies, because the moment independence was promised, Indonesia invaded West Papua. So independence was in place when the Dutch were almost decolonizing their colonies, including West Papua. But the moment that we had our government almost installed, it was installed in 1961. A year later, this agreement came in 1962 in the UN headquarters. So we didn't have the time. We didn't got the time to just start our economies, because we would have a different state. Because before that so-called referendum in 1969, 2 years before, in America found out about this enormous mountain of gold.
Yes.
So before during that referendum that the West Papuans got, the referendum, just 1,000 West Papuans were handpicked on gunpoint and vote. That was the referendum. They already decided that the West Papuans can't get the freedom because the U.S. and supported the corporation Free Papua Morn to sign a pact with Indonesia 2 years before, 1967. So therefore, Indonesia and U.S. companies and the U.S. already made the plan that they will extract the resources at the expense of the self-determination and the people of West Papua. Otherwise, they know that just this 2 million indigenous Black West Papuans could manage such an enormous wealth that our country had. And that has now become the problem for us, because they don't want to give all this wealth to the West Papuan people. Everybody's eating from it. The US, Australia, Indonesia, and many other corporations. And that's why we don't see the same military support by the US, Australia, or Europe to the indigenous peoples of West Papua. While nothing different has happened, whether you look at Russia invaded Ukraine or Indonesia invaded West Papua with the help of the West. It's exactly the same. But it's about our color. It's about the people who are the victim in this case. And then it's not in their interest. Probably.
Raise the issue of Islamic influence.
Yeah, you can say that, because Indonesia is, in this case, the biggest Islamic country. But we don't see the Islam as problem, because the Islams don't allow them to kill your people, your brothers. So it's those in power who are loving the power and the money and allowing this to happen, because Islam don't allow you to do this, right? And Christianity also not, but that's what they do. That's what the US also did as Christian nation. So we left religion outside. It's about the people in power who are doing this.
So our mass support is actually the unity of Christians and Islam.
It's the unity of people who believe in love. Whether you are Islam or Buddhist or Christian, your God don't say you have to kill other people, you oppress people. So we believe in humanity, and especially in Black unity, because those who were and suffer the most, Black people, must understand the pain. Understand what colonialism is. Understand what exploitation of this dirty corporation is. And those are the people that we are looking up to, say, now you have your privilege, you have your freedom. Don't forget us, especially as African nation, as African family. And of course, because we are in this situation, when our brothers and sisters in the Netherlands or Europe who are standing up at this moment, yes, we welcome your help, because you can become an ally as well. You can become a good white ally, because that's what we need. If our African family isn't standing up using the freedom in Africa, we don't have the choice. Then welcome everybody who's highlight this injustice and is willing to fight on our side. like happened in the US in apartheid as well.
Yeah, well, thank you, my brother. I have a question coming out of the Facebook chat, which says, how do the people of West Papua feel about or relate to the rest of the people of the African diaspora?
Yeah, that's a good question. Of course, we feel strong connections between our family on the African continent and the diaspora around the world. If you look at the cultural heritage, it's connected. We just separated in space, but connected in spirit, right? And that's the feeling. And it doesn't matter where you meet each other on the world. There is this instant connection, and yeah, I think that's the answer. How we're looking to a family, and that's also painful that we have seen that our leaders on the African families and leaders on the African continent are silent about injustice against their children and the family in West Papua, and that's why we hope that our brothers and sisters stand up and lobby their governments, and to make sure that they're aware about what is happening there, and they support a just campaign, a just lobby towards independence.
Yes, my brother. You know, you mentioned about decolonization, and African leaders should be dwelling on the point of, you know, developing their people and being closer related to the people in the diaspora. And decolonization is one thing, but you know, it's political. And I think in that sense, it's really, it also has to be cerebral in the sense of they have to feel this in their minds, and decolonizing it's a work,
yeah,
which the minds of people have to be Africanized, in other words.
Yes.
And a whole lot of what's coming at African people now from all directions is cultural de-Africanization. You know, I mean, it's not that they don't use your culture to entertain themselves and do other things, you know, but when it comes to you being self-determined and free and having the power to make your own decisions vis-a-vis what you have in your resources, you know, they have to develop the weapons of mass destruction to keep you in place. So it's people have to understand a lot about what this is. I mean, I don't think that is happening as much as it should, and I don't blame the African people in general, but you know, people in the leadership roles, they have to have the courage to go in that direction. But you know, when we understand the economic side of things and the monetary side of things, you know, the currency rituals and all that, we know that it's a very difficult thing, very difficult decision for people to make when it comes to that. Now, coming to the diaspora part that out of that question, I would like you to mention that, you know, West Papua is Melanesian, and you know, you have a whole lot of people in that area called Melanesia. Can you tell us something about how you relate? West Papua is relating to the other people in Melanesia, and how the Spearhead Group, how is that going for you?
Yeah, thank you for outlining that, Brother Mosi. I think that's important to understand in the first place. If I can reflect on that indeed we can't blame our brothers and sisters, and it's the African leaders who should take the responsibility to educate their citizens about the system, about what is going on, and about the result that we have been confronted nowadays. So from there to the Melanesian region, where West Papua is clearly part of, which consists of 5 nations: Papua New Guinea, Fiji, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, and the Kanaki people, New Caledonia. What you see in similarities is that our way of the way the tribes, the indigenous communities, the original inhabitants of those areas are living is like exactly as the ancestors in Africa are living, with in balance with their environment, the nature, and the way, the way they cook with ground oven, the way they make music, cultural traditions. It's similar, and it's like when you jump from a village in Papua New Guinea or in Vanuatu, is like jumping into another family. And I think you can copy this in many other tribes in Africa, where you have these indigenous communities living with each other in tribes, where you got this tribes communities and ceremonies. I think that is the same spirit that you can see in the Melanesian countries, so the 5 I mentioned before. And therefore, it was a strategic choice of a leadership, I think, in 2014, to swap from knocking on the doors of European countries, such as the Netherlands, the former colonized UK, the US, and other Western countries, to say, hey, we want to decolonize, while these are the countries who brought us in the situation in the first place. It didn't make sense. So we switched from knocking on the doors at European countries in the US to knocking on the doors at the Melanesian countries, because we share the same culture. We share the values. They know how it is to be colonized, like the African countries, but they are much closer to us. So the relationship was much easier for us to travel there, to lobby there, and that's what we did. And in 2014, they arranged this observer membership by these 5 countries of our United Liberation Movement. And since then, because we were an observer member, we had this equal level of negotiating or talking, dialogue with the leaders of this 5 countries. And we used that as step towards the Pacific Island Forum, which is a bigger forum of all these Pacific Island states, to bring West Papua on the agenda there. And that's what happened. We became, on the last 5 years, we became a top 3 priority for the Pacific Island Forum. And under their leadership, they called for this United Nations Human Rights Fact-Finding Mission. It was the Pacific Island Forum who brought this into the resolution. And it has been adopted by the African Union and the Caribbean countries, the so-called ACP, African, Caribbean, and Pacific states, who endorsed this resolution. So that were together, it was 79 countries. So we had a leverage here to make it something big, and that's what we did. So we brought it to the Dutch Parliament, the Netherlands, the former colonized, it accepted it, the UK. So these 5 countries make sure that we got the Pacific Island Forum, and now we got more than 84 countries demanding for this UN Human Rights Mission to West Papua. So this is a big game changer, with this small group of people under the liberation movement, with no big country, not one, are supporting us like they're doing now in Ukraine, giving us money to lobby or travel, just by ourselves, with friends who supported with money, and who prepared the lobby missions in the Netherlands or in Africa. But we have shown that resilience and understanding that you have a right cause, that you cannot give up, and that change will follow soon. And that's the way we have, that's the success that we are seeing. And the potential could be even bigger as soon as 1 or 2 African nations will stand up. And because imagine that 5 African countries will do the same like the Melanesian Spearhead Group is doing, that we become observer member in the first place, and hopefully full member within the African Union. Would this be crazy? This would be a normal thing, right? This should be accepted. This should be supported by all African nations. So this is our hope, that from the Pacific, we will go back first to the African Union. That's what's happening now. We are lobbying there. And we hope that if 1 or 2 countries in Africa will welcome and support a liberation movement, that the African Union will follow soon, like happened in the Pacific region. And then we will have a big game, a turning point, could occur. And that's exactly what we are trying to, hoping and trying to achieve the upcoming 2 to 3 years. Just an update to there, Brother Mosi.
Thank you. I imagine that is not going over well with Indonesia, and there must be a lot of pushback from Indonesia towards these other nations. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, of course, Indonesia is panicking the moment we became observer member in the Melanesian Spirit Group. So they are using money diplomacy since then and a lot of effort around the world to make sure that the support for West Papua will not be there. And we had do a step back because Indonesia was very active this year in the Pacific region, that even one of our strongest friends didn't highlight, at least the 5 Melanesian countries didn't highlight West Papua at the UN General Assembly. So we see that they are doing a lot of work to make sure that the support will decline or will, that West Papua will get off the agenda. But we know the circumstances in the Pacific at the moment. So yes, it's a step back, but we know that next year we're gonna upgrade our lobby and gonna make sure that these countries will stand up and speak again. But they're trying to disrupt our support and movement every single day on every level, on every continent. So therefore, we need more. When the Pacific is declining because of lack of money, and they need money to whatever to do with the challenges there, we need powerful African nations to stand up and to support this, to make sure that Indonesia cannot continue the colonization, cannot continue to genocide against the West Papuans. This must end. So it's about, sharing truth about around the world. And we're confident that, when African brothers and sisters hear this, they will stand up and speak. So this is a process. Educate, and lobby at especially African nations.
Yes. Let me see. Now, there's a question in a few questions in the chat. So let me go to those. One is, how is education, that's political education in general, being used? And I assume it's being, how are ULMWP using what political education with the people of West Papua? How are they educating? Are they, is it easy? Is it hard? Is it?
Yes, so we have several universities in West Papua. For example, the Cendrawasih, which means the Bird of Paradise University, which is one of the most famous in the capital, Jayapura. But we also got the University of West Papua, and several others. So we got a proper education system. But the challenge is that Jakarta has control of, the money that goes into the school, the teachers who will be put in there. And the West Papuans are very, very eager to study and to learn and to help the people. But Indonesia is, keeping West Papua as close as possible. So they won't allow West Papuans to study outside. But things have changed since the appointment of a governor in West Papua. We got 2 provinces and 2 governors, and both of them were West Papuans. And one of them makes sure that more than 1,000 West Papuans were sent outside international, New Zealand, Australia, US, and so they study them, and all of them are eager to help the people at some point. But what Indonesia did when they found out that this governor sent a lot of students, they blocked the scholarships just this year of these Papuan students because they saw them as threat, right? If they become smart and they become, ready and willing, they saw because the students were willing to help the people. of course, which is natural. They stopped the scholarships and pulled them back to West Papua or Indonesia. So we got some challenges, but we know that the people and the West Papuan students, male and female, are super eager students to learn, and that's what Indonesia is afraid of, because we're gonna win from them. We're already doing it, but imagine if we got academics more and more. So that's the challenge. That's the challenge.
Now, going back to that again, that's education in the I guess the common sense of it. Well, what about the political side of how you're educating the youth and the universities and so on? They're in grouping. No, I see them. I see a lot of action going on. So it's obvious that some political education is happening. Yeah.
So if you dive in deeper into the political context, yes, our liberation movement has a national coordinator there. We have a bunch of political activists on behalf of our campaign and the liberation movement, who is holding gatherings on universities, in villages and cities, to make sure that the students and the citizens understand what is happening on a political level, nationally and internationally. So we empower them to get involved in the campaign, in the peaceful liberation movement, because it's their country. And that is exactly what is happening, but in secrecy, because Indonesia is blocking or disrupting, and sometimes you can Google it yourself, student protest West Papua, how they use violence if students come together in universities when they are being holding meetings about the politics, about the liberation struggle. So it's very hard to openly organize political events for students or citizens or whoever wanted to come to an event to learn about the political struggle. But this is a constant process, like a cat and mouse game between the liberation movement and liberation campaign and the Indonesian security forces, because they are, they don't want the West Papuans to be educating the West Papuans about the political right to self-determination. They want them to educate the Indonesian doctrine about how Indonesia liberated them from the Dutch and how they are part of the unitary state of Indonesia. This is, of course, not in their interest, and this is a threat for them. So, because the freedom of movement is very strict, West Papua is one of the most militarized zones with a lot of military checkpoints. You can imagine that just organizing an event could get you in prison for 15 years if you're lucky, and if not, you will be murdered. That's why the numbers are so high. So, the space of freedom is the challenge, and the lack of resources for us to reach to the people is also a challenge. But it's happening in a national scale. The revolution is going on. We know that. The sentiment is there. We don't have to explain West Papuans about the suffering. Every West Papuan have lost a family member because of Indonesian military violence. So we don't have to explain. We just want to reach to them to educate what the international situation is and how they can contribute. But that's a constant process of moving forward, back, but it's happening.
I've got more questions for you, my brother, coming out of the chat. And this one comes from, Dr. Julie. And it says, please describe the ancient migration from Africa and the role sacred sites like Gunung Patang play in the spiritual development of the people. Now, I'm not sure. You're smiling, so maybe you can come up with that, because
I'm smiling because that's a beautiful question, but unfortunately, I don't have the knowledge to answer that. And the honest answer is that I was born in suffering, so I couldn't have had any opportunity to dig into such important cultural heritage. So this is a thing that I put on the list, and hopefully the next time I can answer that. Apologies for this short answer.
All right. Second part to that is, The Chinese once owned a large percentage of Rio Tinto. Do you see them playing a role in influencing the Barrick, Placer Dome, and other mining corporations?
Yes, of course, they are. We are worried about that because we are not part of the negotiation, right? We have no say at all. How we know that it's our land, the land of our ancestors, who once again will be grabbed or will be destroyed, and the people who live there for thousands of years will be forced away, and if they don't work, they'll be killed. So it will be the same suffering which we see by whether it is a US company or an Australian company or Chinese. It doesn't matter because we are not sitting on the table. So we are on the menu, right? And so this is the concept that we face when whatever corporation will be coming to West Papua, because Indonesia is the party who sits on the table and negotiate about whatever deal, and we are the victims once again here. So yes, we are worried constantly about so-called economic developments, which only means more suffering, more land grabbing, more killings against indigenous West Papuans.
I would, in comparison, Suharto, if that's pronounced correctly, was a military dictatorship for some 30 years. And that set the precedent for the international corporations to come in and to make him the super wealth, which he obtained. We find a similar situation in Brazil. I think Brazil left the military dictatorship about the same time that Suharto left power in Indonesia. And recently, the progressive leadership in Brazil won the election a few weeks ago. Do we have a progressive leadership available that's able to stand up? What I see has been constant murder and terror of anybody who opens their mouth in Papua. You know what I'm saying? Papua.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right, brother Julius Menk. Luckily, there's hope in Brazil now with Lula as president, right? And
yeah,
Bolsonaro, we will get rid of Bolsonaro. So that's hopeful. And we are also channeling towards Brazil in the short term and long term. But in Indonesia, unfortunately, we have a so-called progressive president now for 2 terms, which is Jokowi, the people's president. Yes, as long as you are Javanese or Indonesian.
okay.
That's unfortunately the reality in West Papua. So we don't have trust because behind any president that will be elected, whether it is the most left progressive president, the military institutions always play an important role in Indonesia. That's something people have to understand. There is a government, but there's a shadow government of the Indonesian military and former military servant who have becoming, also being part of the high-ranking political elite. So that's what people have to understand, and that's why we West Papuans know that things won't change as long as these structures are still alive in Indonesia.
Well, it's one of the largest gold exporting areas of the world right now.
Say again.
It's one of the largest gold exporting areas of the world right now.
Yeah, he did mention that earlier. Yeah.
Absolutely, it's the world's largest gold mine which is located there, and Indonesia military businessmen have just found out another mountain very close to the current one, which is even probably has a bigger gold reserve. And that's why there's a huge military operation going on for the last 2 years, because they want to control this other mountain. And if you look at nickel, you should Google yourself Indonesia nowadays. We had this G20 just a week ago in Bali with Elon Musk. You should know who Elon Musk is, right? The richest man on planet, live in the US, and they need batteries for his electric cars.
Lithium.
They need lithium and nickel.
Nickel.
At this moment, Indonesia is the largest nickel exporter in the world, and they're gonna be for a while the biggest one. And West Papua got enormous nickel reserves as well. So guess who's going to pay the price for their so-called green energy transition? Once again, peoples and nations like West Papua, Congo Basin, or other parts in the global south will pay the price because the white people want to create a sustainable world, right? So these are important things to know, because the power structures continue if we don't fight up and stand up and fight back.
Yeah. Okay, let me see. Does anybody else have any questions for Brother Raki? Okay. Well, you've okay, my brother. I mean, we're getting some good information here. You know, you coming with that second mounting. That's another story again, with the second larger mounting. I think what I'm seeing is that the Indonesians, you know, it's not going to be easy removing them, getting their claws out of West Papua. So, in essence, we really and truly have to get the world, and especially the African world, behind this. You know, I don't even think they really care whether the African world it makes a noise or not. They just care about the U.S. and whoever the resources are going to, because but again, they themselves are considered a powerful nation in the Pacific. So when they're carrying pressure onto countries in the Pacific, like let's say the Melanesian or other countries, is it an economic kind of pressure, or is it just a fear because they're so large, and militarily they're strong? You know, that they're breeding fear, so to speak.
Yeah, no, it's not the fear part. It's more the you know, economic beneficiaries that unfortunately Pacific Island nations need, because they're dependent on aid money of the US, Australia, and Indonesia is playing into that, giving them a new stadium, you know, football stadium, and keeping them, you know, it's really sad. But on one hand, I understand that, you know, they can use the money to help the people in the short term. But in the long term, you know, the leaders aren't seeing that we are feeding Indonesian government. We are the rich country in the Pacific region. We will help them as true family. But this, once again, as you see in what you see in Africa, unfortunately, you see the Pacific leaders also not finding the courage and taking the moral responsibility, as the European countries are doing for their brothers and sisters in Ukraine, right? While the Pacific leaders and the African leaders are looking the other way and supporting the colonizer in this case. And that's you know, but that's a thing that people can change. That's our confidence, because that's what we've shown. So we must educate the people in the Pacific and in Africa to make sure that they hold their leadership accountable for the choices they make, and that's going to pay off sooner or later.
How's the progress of them building the middle class?
Where?
In Papua.
West Papua.
Yeah,
West Papua, because it's this middle class that comes to intercede and represent the corporations, but then provide more education for the people in general. So you have the neo-colonialism versus colonialism.
Yeah, so that's exactly you know, I really can't say if we have a middle class, because I'm living in the Netherlands, but I know that, you know, we have wealthy West Papuans, and those are exactly the ones who are benefiting from the colonial structures, and who are silent about injustice and like collaborating with Indonesia. So these Papuans are there, of course. So, and to get the top in West Papua in the society, you have to be corrupt. You have to participate with the colonizers. So you see those West Papuans there, of course. But the majority is unfortunately living in, you know, living poor, because they don't want to participate in the colonial system, because that they know that, you know, it's against their interests, it's against their family, it's against their lands, agriculture. But this is the power dynamics. So we are living literally as third-class citizens in our own country. Our mothers are sitting on the ground while the foreigners and other Indonesians are sitting in the shops, while Chinese own the shops. And Indonesians own the shops. They're the academics. They got the privileged positions in society. This is the reality there. So that's why the revolution is ongoing and it's increasing, because the sentiment is just increasing to get that independence, because we are threatened like animals, like third-class citizens in our own country, knowing that we could be the richest country in the world. And that's the challenge constantly. Fighting against the machine, fighting against the power structures, and sometimes fighting against our own people.
Hmm.
Are
That's
you able
interesting.
to export students into Europe and Africa?
Yes, we are, but Indonesia is responding on that by taking them back, taking off the money that the governor has arranged, because they saw the potential, the increase in numbers of students, and getting their master in law, master in whatever, international relations, and they saw the potential of us organizing ourselves, mobilizing the world. It will happen, but because this kind of disruption took place, it took more time to build the higher profile structure in a campaign.
So you're hopeful that, but how many students do you think are getting out other than through scholarships, that are freely being able to exit and get an education outside? I said people going to Australia or Fiji or someone. Are anybody
Yes.
offering them that?
A few, but these are probably the privileged children of Papuan elites who are benefiting from the colonialism. So they got very prominent position, and their children study in Australia or US, but they don't do anything after that. After they graduate, they will work for an Indonesian company or for the government or for a Western, corporation. So they are no use in that sense. So the ones who are really wanted to study outside and do something for the people, of course, don't have the resources or are not allowed to go outside. So these are the systematic systematic closed doors organized by the colonizer, right? In the hope that we won't able to organize ourselves with well-equipped students.
Yeah. Okay. I don't see anybody up with a hand up. So, okay. Your closest neighbor, PNG. I've noticed that in some ways they are becoming more progressive in the way they're moving towards demanding freedom for West Papua. How do you feel about what's going on there? I know the governor, I think of Port Moresby, I think I recently saw that he has may had some complaints about his own PNG government.
Yeah.
What? But how could he separately help with West Papua?
Yes. So what you see in Papua New Guinea is exactly, almost unfortunately, the same as what you see in a lot of African countries, is that the leaders who got power, and those in Papua New Guinea, the first presidents, were put there basically by Australia and the US to make sure that their corporations' interest will continue to extract the resources of out of Papua New Guinea. And you got a kind of puppet government serving the West, the US and Australia in particular, and the corporation. So that's what we saw. And at the same time, these governments, from the moment that Papua New Guinea just got their independence by Australia in 1975, they had to shut them out about what is happening in West Papua. And so there was no economic independence. There was political independence, but no economic independence. And they were held in a strength to not educating their own citizens, who were left in poorness and not well educated. So this is the result of Western neocolonialism structures and imperialism, which didn't disappear. So our campaign anticipated on that, because it's strange that this one island, we are one people, one nation, basically. That our brothers and sisters in the East are just silent, and we can't blame them if we understand which power structures has caused their silence, has caused their unawareness in that region. So that's where our campaign immediately started for about 20 years ago to launch a chapter in Papua New Guinea, where we built a grassroots network, educating students in Papua New Guinea, educating politicians and media to understand about, how could you look the other side? And this campaign makes sure that people like the governor of Papua from PNG, from Port Moresby, and other governors stand up and speak out about the suffering of the people, the brothers and sisters in the West. So, and this brought the momentum that West Papua was welcomed by the current president, Marape, under a presidential escort when Benny Wenda, our president, arrived there 2 years or 3 years ago, before the pandemic. And this is the relationship that we have to build. A lot of things has to happen behind closed doors or behind the radar, because we know that Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, unfortunately, have some relations, and this takes time. So we make important steps, but it's also fragile. This is a constant process, because Indonesia is disrupting on every level and every occasion, as we have seen. So, but we are hopeful, because we know that the support in Papua New Guinea will increase; it won't decline. So whether this president prime minister won't act, the next one probably will work harder. That's we're confident about that, and also for other countries in Melanesia and the Pacific and around the world, where we got grassroots supporters and allies in the in institutions, in the society. The pressure will be built up, but the more, the better, because then the process goes faster.
Thank you, bro. Well, let me shift gears a little bit towards the European side. We're campaigning, and I mean, the ex-colonial masters are all residing on that continent. Are you able to penetrate in a large scale the parliamentary system there to gain support? How is that going? I mean, are you confident? Well, I mean, you said you're confident in the future, but we're talking about the rate of which the changes are happening. How do you see that?
Yes, I am confident, because we have seen what we have achieved the last 20 years since the launch of our campaign in global support, and at the end in political support. Understanding that we have no freedom, we have no resources like a independent country like Indonesia, or even a small island state in Vanuatu has. We have managed to mobilize our people in West Papua. We have managed to collect 1.8 million signatures, which is 70% of our population. We have managed to become an observer member in the Melanesian Spirit Group. This is something that Indonesia didn't expect, that the world didn't expect. We can achieve with just a handful of people. They didn't expect that we will achieve 84 countries demanding a human rights fact-finding mission. And all of this happened, right? So that gives us the confidence that over time, yes, people will follow you, support will increase, and things will change. Like the Papua New Guinea government escorted our liberation movement 3 years ago. This was a huge blow in the face of Indonesia. Is it enough? Of course not. But we know that these things, lobbying costs time, and that's what the challenge is. Lobbying costs money. And in the Netherlands, where I'm based, we have seen 60 years silence. But things are changing. Last week, we had a parliamentary hearing where 6 experts, including me, finally had an opportunity in my lifetime, the first time that the former colonizer organized such a parliamentary hearing, which is sad, but it happened just last week, where we explained the historical context, the gross human rights violations, and that our demand is we want that West Papua will be on the table, on the agenda in the Dutch parliament from now on. And we want funds from the Dutch government as, historical responsibility for the independence that they promised and the genocide which is going on now to restore something. So this is not dreaming. It's happening right now. The UN mission is not a dream. It's happening right now. So I want people to understand how we have reached this point with no money on a bank account, just by citizens, whether they are in West Papua, in the Pacific region, or in the Netherlands. It's citizens who stand up, like in the time of the slavery, like in the time of the apartheid, like in the time that East Timor got the independence from Indonesia. It's not something magical. Power is us. That's what I wanted to tell my brothers and sisters. It's us to find the courage to stand up and do something tomorrow, the next day, or the day after. And change will follow. The confidence is that we already achieve a lot of change, and we are still moving every day. The revolution in West Papua is increasing because the suffering didn't end. The momentum is increasing. But it takes us together to bring this to the next level and to create the bigger momentum. And that's the goal. That's the formula. It's not something big. It's about us, you and me, to do what is right. And change will follow. That's it.
I do agree, my brother. The challenge is mobilizing people globally, so to speak, to get that support going. Because you mentioned South Africa. Let's face it. Without people mobilizing globally and having the help of even a small nation such as Cuba and others, we probably would not have seen South Africa being free today. Free, of course, in a political sense. There, as always, the economic levers are in the hands of the Europeans, and they are the ones who are shifting things price-wise, etc. You may own the resources, but you don't price it yourself. Selling it to them, they call the price. And you're mentioning it takes money for students to get out of West Papua and to get an education outside of that. As something against that, we probably have to see other nations, maybe Australia, maybe Fiji, maybe even in the Melanesian spearhead group, accepting students out of West Papua to educate them or to help in financing their education. It has to be a unified thing, and hopefully we can get that to happen. Britain, you're active in Britain as well. Have you? Well, boy, that's another story. But have you been getting any indication of Britain moving in any direction in aiding West Papua self-determination?
Yes, that's a good question. Not the government, of course, unfortunately, like many other governments, but in Britain, we got the biggest parliamentary support group for West Papua. The All Parliamentary Group for West Papua in the British Parliament, from left to right, who are trying to work together to keep West Papua on the agenda in the British Parliament. And we are trying to do the same in the Netherlands. So this concept has potential, because the more parliamentarians and we have, for example, in the US Senate or the House of Representatives, the bigger chance that we can force the government to do something, or to keep West Papua in the US agenda or an Australian agenda. So this is a hopeful sign, and of course, it's not the only thing we are doing, but it's one element in all the things we are doing. We hope that if it's not working here, it will work in the Netherlands or in Australia or in the Melanesian Spirit Group. So we try to be everywhere, but of course, it's a lack of capacity and resources to make sure that we can continue this on a high level. But yeah, we are confident also that steps, we will make a next step this year, and hopefully next step next year to create progress. Yeah.
One of the power aspects of the anti-apartheid movement was the creation of a blockade. The blockade that prevented their ability to export South African products. From the American side, it was called the Sullivan Act. And I could imagine that the ability to blockade the shipping from the gold areas and the mineral areas would be the only other way you could bring pressure on the military, is that you're actually able to stop their flow of cash by blocking the shipping. And that calls for international action, like from China or from the British, who pretty much, I think, control the waterways around Indonesia, and basically pay the Indonesian government to be the on-base military, while they actually patrol the surrounding waters. British, Australian, and US Air Force Navy. And I would think that China would be involved in those to a certain degree as well, in order to bring a blockade against these products being exported that would start to halt their cash flow. A concept from time.
You're absolutely right. This could and should be an option for our grand strategy. We haven't talked about it, but I think it can be very, very powerful to do such a thing. And I think, especially if these are, of course, West Papuans, but with the help of perhaps other nationalities, so we have an international dispute, right? Because their citizens are involved. This is where international solidarity can make a huge difference. But yeah, of course, we shouldn't talk this too much online. But in the long run, this is absolutely something that we should think about. Why not? By any necessary means. This is a just cause.
Mic's off.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted there for a minute. I have to thank you for giving us that update that you just been. Oh, Baba Congo, yes. Mute yourself, please. Yeah. Okay. Baba Congo, I was just about to say we've reached that point where, brother Raki is way across the pond, and it's way past midnight for him there, and he, I always promise him not to keep him too late up, because he's a family man. So we will briefly hold a bit if you have any questions at this point to ask the brother. I know you.
No questions right now.
Oh, okay. Well, I think you missed some good points, because we did discuss some of the elements of change that is taking place in the Pacific as a point. Brother Raki, I thank you again. Now, I don't know when again, but let's hope it'll be soon, and let's hope things will be moving in at a more rapid pace
Mm.
towards independence. Now, we're up against, I mean, the question that was asked and all this thing about by Brother Mink regarding the resources and blockade and stuff. These people are all in it together. I don't know if they're going to blockade themselves. They're all in it together, and they want whatever. Especially now, as you mentioned, the business of resources dealing with the electronic world, electric motors and so on, batteries and all that stuff. So I have I really have no faith in them doing anything of the sort. But we as a people, we do have to do more than we're doing now. It's very difficult, I must add, but I have to make a resolution, even if it's by myself, that next year must be different. We must promise to be different for next year. Starting on December 1st, the year begins on December 1st, okay? And we will move on to make things different towards the following December 1st. Now, I must tell you why I'm mentioning December 1st, folks. Raki, if you can give a little explanation of December 1st and what you're planning to do and how you're organizing in that sense. Yeah, for the next couple of minutes, if you can, please.
Yes, sure, absolutely. So, yeah, thank you for highlighting that, Brother Mosi. So, December 1st was 1961, was the day that Indonesia, correction, the Netherlands, our former colonizer, gave the West Papuans the Morning Star flag, which is the flag that you see behind Brother Baba Mosi. The Morning Star flag was given to the West Papuans. It was officially installed next to the colonizer's flag of the Netherlands in preparation towards independence. So we see this day as celebration of that independence that was promised. It was there. And therefore, every year on December 1st, you see the Morning Star flag everywhere on social media in West Papua as sign that we didn't forget what happened on that day. And this is that the dream will be fulfilled as long as the people find the courage to stand up. So every December 1st, which is in 5 days, if I'm not wrong, we call our friends to raise the Morning Star flag on your social media channel, and you share your solidarity for the people of West Papua. And this is a pain in the eyes of Indonesia. So therefore, December 1st, in solidarity with West Papua, share the photo, the Morning Star flag on your social media. And that's exactly what Indonesia don't like. Thank you.
You've heard it from Brother Raki. Again, Brother Raki, much respect to you and the leadership of the West Papua campaign and Freedom Campaign. And I'm very hopeful myself that together we can do this. And you said it, right? It's in our hands, right? And we need to just understand the struggle and understand what it will take to get there. We've been there before, and we can't be tired just because a part of the world has changed, and they're still, some of us can get tired over and over. And you've lost. I know recently you've lost some of the elders in the struggle. Quite a few of them in that generation, and it should be a new batch of people coming up. And I think I'm looking at one right now. But so hopefully we all will watch when this independence comes, when Indonesia is removed from that part of the world, from West Papua. So freedom, Papua, Merdeka,
Papua Merdeka. Thank you, UNIA family. Thank you, sisters and brothers, for your time, for your ears, and for your solidarity. And we will march to victory. That's one thing for sure. Freedom will be there, and we're going to celebrate it together. Take a good care of yourself, and hope to see you all soon
Next time.
again. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thank you. Great. All right.
Black power is alive.
Papua Merdeka.
Black Power Live, for sure. Papua Merdeka.
Yes, indeed. Okay, brother.
Take
You
care.
know, I want to give thanks to Brother Heru for hanging in there with us. You know, Brother Heru is our technical person in the background, and you know, he's been very good in keeping us going. I want to thank everybody else who has been on, and it's been a great presentation. And I hope we've learned quite a bit that would enable us to move on and to be more, give more aid and solidarity with the people of West Papua in their freedom struggle. So until my brother, peace and love. Yes. All right.